Hello, Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Good For Us. We give the latest cricket news. But today we're starting our series of working out the all-time 11s and the current 11s for Test cricket for the 8 teams I mentioned in the previous video. Today we're going to look at Australia. Okay, with Australia, they have dominated cricket for 20 of the last 35 years. Okay, so first off, captaincy. Yes, you could talk about Ricky Ponting. Okay, you can talk about Alan Border, you could talk about Don Bradman, right? Steve Waugh all the way, and I'm not going to have an argument there. Yes, Steve Waugh had one of the best Australian teams ever to guide through the entire process. Come on, the dude played 57 test matches as captain and won 41 of them. Okay, his win percentage was in the 70s. Okay, this guy was no joke as captain. He was a smart man, great tactician, and used himself and the other bowlers very, very well. He's known as one of the greatest modern era captains, but for me, he has to be Australia's captain. And I'm trying not to say that, oh, he was just a good captain. Dude scored more than 10,000 test runs, okay? Had an average of above 50, so he was definitely someone that fits into this side, okay? Right, openers. Matthew Hayden. Dude scored 380 runs. He's the second highest scorer in Test cricket. He went past Brian Lara's 375, okay? He is the only man to do so. I think it's almost blasphemous to say he shouldn't be in this side, but there's a couple of more players that I want to talk about. And surprisingly, not Mark Taylor and Michael Slater, because they've averaged in the low 40s for most of their career. I just said Bill Lawry. I genuinely saw a couple of his batting performances recently, and I thought to myself, dude, this guy was way before his time. He had a strike rate of 80. He had a strike rate of 80 in Test cricket, and the dude scored over 5,000 runs, the highest score of 210. And I know I'm not just going to talk about stats in this video, but this guy was absolutely prolific. He was a hitter before hitters were a proper thing in Test cricket. So honestly, it's hard to even look past him, but there are a couple of more players. Like I said, Justin Langer, an average of 47. Right now, Australia's coach, but he does have a strong mind. He's resilient, and I keep remembering that one match. It was Justin Langer facing Shoaib Akhtar. There was a lot of back and forth in terms of verbal exchanges, but he, at the end of it, had the last laugh. He scored a century and played really, really well. So all I'm saying is Justin Langer had that resilience, so maybe he makes it into the opening slot. Another player, Arthur Morris. He is one of the openers from, Bradman's Invincibles, okay? Which was another prolific Australian team. He was a very good batsman. Unfortunately, debuted a lot later in his career, but the little that he did play, I think he played, 45, 46 test matches and scored in excess of 3,500 runs. So he was very good, but he's another lefty. If we look at it, we have a lot of left-handers in this list. We've got Hayden, we've got Langer, we've got Bill Lawry, we've got Arthur Morris. If you even want to look at it, you even got Mark Taylor, okay? Michael Slater is the only right-handed opener, but unfortunately, he does not make the side for me, right? He doesn't make the top 4, top 5 openers that I would consider for an Australian all-time 11. So yeah, these guys are absolutely brilliant. If we move down to the middle order, who else than Sir Donald Bradman? An average of 99.94 just because he got a duck in his final test match. Otherwise, he would have had an average of 100. This guy was absolutely brilliant in every sort of way. The way he drove the ball was fantastic. He actually was unorthodox. If you look at him and look at the way he drove the ball, it's very similar to the way Steve Smith drives the ball. But when he has connection, the way he swings the bat and goes for the cover drive, it's very reminiscent of Donald Bradman. So Sir Bradman has to go into the side in this middle order. Like I said, I've already got Steve Waugh, and he's going to be somewhere in the middle order, okay? Then you have Ricky Ponting, a guy who has scored in excess of 13,000 test runs. He's been a great captain, maybe even a really good confidant. Steve Waugh and Bradman, coming together, and the tactics and the strategies they'd come up with would be outstanding. People talk about Greg Chappell. People talk about Neil Harvey, okay? Neil Harvey, a guy who's scored over 6,000 runs in Test cricket, but I would actually favor someone else. If I were to select someone, I would say Michael Hussey was a better batsman at the end of it, right? Yes, he started his international career a little later, okay? But in terms of the way Michael Hussey conducted himself, he was a man who would come in and actually save Australia. Okay, if not just save, he'd actually be there to provide some sort of stability, which is why he has a lot more not outs than Mr. Neil Harvey. So he might actually be favored in my opinion. So yeah, these guys are great. I've actually even forgotten Steve Smith, but the thing is, he'd be in the current 11 and I can't put him in there. By the way, David Warner would also be in that opener slot, but he can't fit in because of, the current 11. He's going to be in there for me. Alan Border, one of the first test players to pass the 10,000 test runs mark, an average of above 50, all right? It's so difficult to get everyone into this side, but Alan Border was an absolute champion as well. Okay, the Australian setup has been so good for so many years that it's surprising to see that their current 11 is not as good as it could be, and it's really, really surprising. I'll get to the current 11, but in this all-time 11, Alan Border definitely needs to be considered as an option as well. And he was a decent captain and a pretty good fielder, and he did pick up 35-40 test wickets. Yes, he's a part-time bowler. He's not even a part-time bowler, but if you look at him as a whole, I think he's definitely someone who can fit in to this all-time 11. Australia never had someone like Ian Botham, Imran Khan, Kapil Dev, Richard Hadley, at least in that era. But if you go further back, they had someone called Keith Miller, who could be a potential all-rounder. Probably doesn't make the all-time 11, but if they had to find an all-rounder for somewhere, he'd be the guy who's taken, over 170 wickets with the ball, okay, at an average of 22 and a half. And then with the bat, he scored, 700s, 13 50s, and scored just shy of 3,000 runs at an average of 36 and a bit, okay? So he is the only all-rounder contender for this team. And it's disheartening, but at the same time, yeah, there's no one else. So Shane Warne probably is the closest to an all-rounder Australia's had. I don't think there's anyone who's batted so well as, someone like Keith Miller has, and bowled so well as well. Maybe Pat Cummins, if he becomes a much better batsman and performs consistently, maybe he can fall into that bracket, but that's not happening anytime soon. So yeah, in terms of all-rounders, that's all for Australia, and it'll be hard to fit him in my opinion. Then we come down to number 7. And this is the thing. How can you not have an absolutely brilliant glovesman and a fantastic batsman in that number 7 wicket-keeping spot, okay? Yes, Ian Healy, amazing gloveman, all right? Batting was not as good. Rodney Marsh, amazing gloveman. But his batting wasn't that great. Brad Haddin, right? Brad Haddin, even he had an average of above 30 in Test cricket. Probably better than Healy and Marsh with the bat, but with the gloves, he was very good. But I think Healy would trump that, so it's hard to decide. But in a way, that's easy to decide because you have Adam Gilchrist. Dude has an average of 47.6. His strike rate is above 80. He scored over 5,000 runs in Test cricket. Batting at number 7, even then, he was able to score, 17 Test hundreds, right? He scored one of the fastest hundreds as well, by the way. He's hit 100 sixes in his Test career. That's a lot for Test cricket. Well, at least it was before, right? So he is a sure shot in. And then next we come on to the bowlers. And yes, this means that they only have 4 bowlers. Number 1, it depends where you play, but Shane Warne gets in at number 8, 100%. But then I was racking my brain. I was like, if I've got Warne at 8, okay, I can only pick 3 bowlers. And if I pick an extra spinner, who would that be? But more likely than not, I'll pick 3 paces. But if I was to pick an extra spinner, you could go with Richie Benaud. Okay, you could go with Nathan Lyon, who has almost 400 wickets, still at 399. There's another name that I actually found out because of this, was Clary Grimmett. He was one of the first bowlers I've seen with a round arm action. There were a few before him as well, but he had a round arm action. He was known as the Bradman of spin. Didn't know that. So maybe he's a very good contender, but because of how great Shane Warne was, second highest wicket taker in Test cricket, over 700 wickets. So he kind of has to get in there. Plus he's bowled a bowl of the century in both centuries, in the 1900s and in the 2000s. So Shane Warne might be the only spinner I actually go with in this side. Then we move down to the fast bowlers. Brett Lee, over 300 wickets. Mitchell Johnson, over 300 wickets. Jeff Thompson, over 200 wickets. But I can't have all 3 of these, right? Because we're going to have Glenn McGrath at 11. He has the second most wickets as a fast bowler in Test cricket, okay? Second to James Anderson, might become third soon after Stuart Broad keeps doing what he's doing. So yeah, McGrath, 563 wickets. So consistent, so line and length heavy, right? And then swinging and seaming the ball from the exact same place. He was a majestic bowler, honestly. So he's there at 11 somewhere, okay? But there's other bowlers that fit into that middle order. We talked about spinners, but like I said, Brett Lee, Jeff Thompson, Mitchell Johnson, Jason Gillespie even. Yes, Gillespie went downhill afterwards, but Gillespie's not a bad showing, right? But the others just probably rake above him. That left arm angle might give Mitchell Johnson a slight edge, and I know he had a better bowling average, surprisingly, and more wickets than Brett Lee in Test cricket, which I didn't know that till today either. So both of them could be somewhere in that number 9 spot. But yeah, I think Dennis Lillee as well as McGrath are just shoo-ins. And then that number 9 potential spot is where we have all the conjecture, all right? Then there's just one space to fill in everyone else. Yes, there would be different combinations. People might actually bring in someone like Ray Lindwall, okay? And they'd say, oh, maybe they could fit in there. It's difficult to get those guys in, okay? If you have Glenn McGrath and you have Dennis Lillee, okay? It's so difficult to get those guys in. And I've named a couple of players there, but they would be the bowlers that I would choose from 100%. I have Jeff Thompson, Brett Lee, Mitchell Johnson, right? People might say Mitchell Stark, Josh Hazlewood, Pat Cummins. They don't even come into the discussion. They'll probably be in the current 11 though, okay? But in this all-time 11, I don't see them anywhere. So Jeff Thompson, man, yes, with the new restrictions, with the bounces and all that stuff, right? He might not be as expressive or be able to be as expressive. So that's probably the only reason I wouldn't have him in my team. But I think in terms of, you know, having a pot of bowlers for Australia, these guys are definitely in there. Jason Gillespie even, right? Yes, his career at the end of it just started to go downhill, but it doesn't really matter, honestly. I think he's a very, very good option. So yeah, it's going to be hard because Australia has been so good for so long that it's hard to get their 11 spot on. But mine is Hayden, then Laurie, Bradman, Sir Bradman, Ricky Ponting, Alan Border, Steve Waugh, Gilchrist, Shane Warne. I have to go for Mitchell Johnson, even though I really want Brett Lee, but I have to go for Mitchell Johnson for some brilliant spells of bowling that he's done. Mitchell Johnson, Brett Lee, or Thompson. I just can't pick that number 9 spot. And then we have to look at Dennis Lillee and Glenn McGrath as their other 2 fast bowlers. It's pretty simple for me, but you guys let me know what you think. I'll do a live stream and we can talk through it as well, for sure. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like the content. Do let me know what you thought about this list and your 11s for sure. And until next time, please take care.